continuing on that theme, what is your opinion on what happened this September 11th with the killing of Ambassador Stevens, and which may or may not have been provoked or related to the Innocence of Muslims video, but also more particularly to the reaction within the United States to some of the unrest that was perceived in much of North Africa and what we would call the Middle East in reaction to that?
Like you said, I know there are parts of our society who would like to think that what happened on September 11th, this last September 11th at the embassy in Libya, is all clear cut, and the administration should come with it. I'd like to think that there's more to it than what we've been told, and it continues to unfold. But let me go back to the idea of the film that was made, that evidently became a part of this, and then go back to the idea of what I think it's Pastor Jones from Florida. Who wasn't
the Quran book
burning thing. So here is what I would say is that we live in a time where certain religious groups, particularly obviously in terms of Americans vis-a-vis Muslims in general, and certainly Muslim extremists or Muslim terrorists or whatever language you want to use. Why in the world would we set about not only to say something, but to do something to inflame what is already? And what the reaction was after this last September 11th should remind us that what is happening in the world, there is a kind of a simmering thing that is right beneath the surface. Now, do I think that some of it is just a big kind of a show? Yeah, part of it. But when in fact it accelerates to the point where it again really underlies, and becomes divisive, and of course, then a Muslim person, or heaven forbid if you wear a turban and mistakenly, all of a sudden this drives within us a kind of sense of revenge, and it sort of sends a hatred in the hearts of some. And so this might start up as something that just, is galvanized over a bunch of nations, but the ripple effect in terms of what it does to us, not in terms of policy, but in terms of what something like that could do to us in terms of memory. But also, when Pastor Jones or this movie, it seems to me that why would we set out to do something that, in my view, has no redemptive value whatsoever, except, of course, either to give you your 15 minutes of fame, but without thinking what damage it could do for the fabric of our society. And then, because there was really no great rootedness to what happened in September 11th recently, it died. My concern is when something takes root. And if it does, it's kind of like, if you have a flame going, and it's not strong enough, a strong breeze will simply extinguish it. If you have a flame going that is really strong, a strong breeze will actually expand it. I think part of what happened in September 11th was a little bit of a flame that, as they say, died. But the damage that it creates while it is still going, I think it's not irreparable, but it is certainly, absolutely, it certainly inflames who we are as a people again. And actually, I think it really does a great deal of disservice and damage, particularly that to Muslims in this country. Because I even listening to what many said afterward, they're saying that many people who were involved in these demonstrations do not realize the effect of what their actions will have on those of us who want to become a part of the fabric of this society and live peaceably.
You talked about how American foreign policy relates to the Middle East with respect to religion, and you said that there are more important factors to the Middle East foreign policy than religion. But a lot of people in the United States seem to forget that when we refer to Israel, we refer to Iraq or Afghanistan or Pakistan, that we usually refer to them as Islamic nations. And that kind of leads people to assume that the people who live there are almost exclusively Muslim, when in fact there's a very diverse mix of religions in these countries. Do you feel like the religions in the Middle East that are not Islam are just underplayed heavily? Like, we just don't acknowledge them as much because we want to focus on them as Muslim nations for some reason?
Yeah, we do. And let me sort of say in general, I know there are exceptions to this, I think that really points to a serious intellectual laziness on our part. When we generalize that way, we simply do not have to think beyond our generalization. By the way, we do it with race. We do it with gender. We do it with different groups of people. The truth of the matter is that people forget that Iran and Iraq, often people lump them, but these are nations that were at war. One is Persian, one is Arab. I mean, they're not one and the same. They're not cut from the same cloth. And then within nations, you have all kinds of really, I think, substantial groups, each with their own identity. And while there might be commonalities, each probably, really have to be taken seriously as an entity.
The biggest, I guess, misconception that I saw in relationship to this, with especially in the recent media, was when the Muslim Brotherhood became such a big name in Egypt after the revolution. But Egypt, and they were talking about how now, Egypt is now an exclusively Muslim-controlled country, which is far from true. I believe the Christian population of Egypt is like 30%.
And it's by the way, and it's an ancient group in Egypt, in Ethiopia. I mean, the Coptic Church. This one of the early, profoundly historic and important church. But here's the thing. It's an easy way out. It's a totally easy way out. If I can simply say that this nation is all Muslim and this nation is all Hindu and this nation is all Christian and this nation is all Jew, then I don't really have to, mess around with thinking about groups. Except, of course, if I do that, I have totally collapsed the identities of people and the groups of people with their own separate, history and identities into one large group. The moment we do that, I think it leads to a path of hatred. I think generalization does that because we simply do not take each other seriously anymore because you belong to a group, and therefore, since I have my own issues with that group, I will never take you seriously. And I think we do that. I think we do that with nations. I don't think all of us do that with nations, but quite often we do it with nations. And particularly for some reason in the Middle East. And by the way, right after September 11th, in 2001, we had people in the press, absolutely vilifying European nations that did not necessarily give us full support as part of a coalition, that kind of stuff. And large groups of people got dumped into one. And I think that's unfortunate. It shows a kind of a real serious laziness on our part to take each other and groups seriously and not just cast this large kind of net over everyone.
Recently, it made the news that nuns were reprimanded by the Vatican for social justice programs, while the Catholic Church has now actually supposedly embraced evolution for the means by which God created the diverse array of species that we've seen. Do you see this, just the current state of the Catholic Church, do you see it as like at the same time that they're making progress, they're also staying put in certain, I guess, not exactly progressive means of social, I guess, empowerment for certain people?
I think the role of the nuns, and I think in a much more expansive way the role of women in the church has been for a long time, and actually has an ongoing issue. And one would hear all of the arguments. The arguments are very common, so we don't have the time to go over these here. But in terms of how women will function, and what the nuns are doing is actually not so much saying that we're going against the Vatican. They're saying what we are about to do, and they've challenged Congressman Paul Ryan's position on this issue about the care of the poor and how one goes about doing this. I think it's a larger issue that the Vatican and the Catholic Church has in terms of the role of women. It's an ongoing, and I don't think even close to being resolved issue in terms of the role and the power of women within the church. I think that's what it comes down to. I think the nuns on the bus have been sort of going after the importance of caring for the poor, the marginalized, the oppressed, health care and so on for everyone. Strange thing about that, those are remarkably central biblical principles. And therefore, when they get up and they speak publicly about this, they're actually in really good company.
Now, we know that the day that this airs, you will be hosting the conference here at Georgia Southern. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll just say a word about this. The conference is called Religion and Politics Beyond Left and Right. And the idea, particularly in terms of its timing, is to have students and a group of faculty as well participate in talking about topics surrounding that major topic as we head into the election on November 6th. It begins on Friday evening at 3:30 with registration, followed by an opening presentation that I will be giving, a discussion of part of a debate between Bill O'Reilly and John Stewart, and a faculty roundtable, and then follows up on Saturday, November the 3rd, from 9:30 to I think 6 in the evening, primarily with student presentations and a faculty roundtable discussion. I hope people come out. There is no cost. It's in the Information Technology building, and it's free for everyone to attend.
Well, in closing, we would like to thank you, sir, Dr. Gossai, for coming on the show today. And we would like to thank the Honors Program for letting us use the Eidson House to record.
The voices that won't be televised will be heard on the radio.
So now it's your time to speak up.